As promised, a very important conversation ahead. It's World Food Safety Day. It's celebrated today, the 7th, and I want to welcome from the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, their National Communications Consultant, Naylan Dwarika. Good to see you. It's been quite a long time, and I'm happy to have you on the program this morning, and thanks for your time.
Well, good morning, Jason, and good morning to your viewers, and it's really nice to be with you here this morning, especially on such an auspicious day, World Food Safety Day.
It is, and listen, I mean, food, it's, without food, we'll be nowhere. It's a necessity, and when we consider food and safety, a very important conversation. And I was going through some of the notes you would have sent, and well, what stood out to me, and I want to start with the youngsters, the babies, children under 5. The stats are suggesting here that they make up about 9% of the world population, but they go through and experience 40% of food-borne diseases. They carry that burden, youngsters under 5. Alarming.
It is alarming, Jason. World Food Day is in its 5th year, really, right? Just as you say, 5 years old. And, you know, it's fortuitous in a sense that we would have had this observance coming just before the recent global pandemic, simply because we were bringing awareness to food safety. Because the figures, Jason, as you were saying, the figures are really kind of telling. And in the wider sense, you have 600 million people a year across the world who get sick via some foodborne disease or the other. Now, I mentioned the pandemic just now, and it's important to note that, like, for instance, I was surprised at the hand washing methodologies that people used before and during the pandemic and how different they were. And sanitization, people became very aware of that at that point. Mm-hmm. Prior to that, you know, people were probably a little bit lax in terms of hygiene and their measures. Now, when translated into food, Jason, I, just like yourself, we've been, I think, fans of food since we were born. and the main thing is you must be very cognizant of what you put in your body. And, you know, that was another debate during the pandemic. What do we put in our bodies? But let's start with food, and let's not talk about anything else. In terms of food must be safe. And there are very different junctures at which food can be certified safe, from the farm right up to the fork on the table. And, you know, what we are pushing is the head that, you know, everyone is a stakeholder in the business of safe food, because safe food benefits everyone. And when we talk about children who are being afflicted by foodborne diseases, it is a problem. It is a problem throughout the world, even in the Caribbean. And we have food issues, food security, and issues of food and nutrition in the Caribbean as well, and that is reflected in our in our yearly reports and our annual reports. So yes, it is something disconcerting, and the FAO uses the data, and we use a complex global network of experts, where every year we add to the knowledge that we have about safe foods.
Of course.
And that knowledge is in the very mystically named Codex Alimentarius. But wow, that simply means the food code. And there are over like 10,000 recommendations and guidelines in there on how food should be safe, how to recognize safe food.
And indeed, what I'm just going to say is that based on what you're saying here, this knowledge, this information, the data will now guide behavior, hopefully change behavior, and we can see a reduction in some of the numbers, because I'm looking at, again, one in every 10 person worldwide could fall sick, can be contaminated with the food. Imagine just food that we're eating. And I consider, I would have seen a documentary. I remember watching stuff regarding seafood, well, at least the fish that they grow now in these massive fish farms. And they're suggesting that even with the seafood and certain foods that we might go towards that direction, thinking it's safer, healthier, there can even be problems in that regard. So I think it's important to continue this conversation, Naylan. Very important conversation, because water and food, without that, we can't make a note. That's life.
Yes, Jason, and that's very important. And I'm glad you brought up that, because, you know, some people say, you know, we have something farm raised or we have something wild caught. in terms of food. And yes, there are arguments to and pro, but the main thing is that there are standards for doing it. No matter what you do with food, there are standards to do it, and always standards to keep it safe. All right. So, for instance, well, two things are happening this morning. Right now, in my headquarters at Rome, we are launching the World Food Safety Day toolkit. So you can go onto FAO.org and just type in World Food Safety Day, and you will get all the information that is available, all our research, and the mystically named Codex Alimentarius as well, to understand the work that we do every year. Recently, we also, well, today we're also having a handover for one of our projects, which is the Mexico CARICOM FAO initiative, Resilient School Feeding Program and Resilient Agriculture Program. And we're handing over some items today as well. Now, those programs also incorporate tilapia farmers in Trinidad and Tobago. Now, there may be several different ways to do tilapia farming, for instance, but there are very safe ways to do it as well.
Yes.
So when you think about fish farming and stuff, and you see the videos on TV, maybe some standards are not being followed, as simple as that. Yeah. Because Jason, what I can tell you is that I recently saw a viral video on social media, and the host of the show, he was looking at identical products, but from different countries. And you would see that one product in one country was colored by red number 40, whereas the same product in another country was colored by natural ingredients, maybe beetroot or something. And what gives? Those are laws that give that, because those laws are the safety standards. And we have safety standards in Trinidad and Tobago through various mechanisms and agencies. In fact, the FAO partners with the Ministry of Agriculture, Lands and Fisheries on some of these issues, because the ministry is concerned about food safety issues of food sustainability and food security, and the transformation of the food systems in Trinidad and Tobago. And these are lessons that that we learned during the pandemic, although some people may have forgotten as soon as the first fast food restaurant reopened its doors. But we became very sensitive to it, and it was just in the recent past. So we understand, and we are supposed to know and value what real food is, what safe food is. Because only when you do that, you have safe food, then you have food security.
Food security is very important.
And when you have food security, you have healthy minds and bodies for your nation.
Naylan, I want to ask you, before we get some more concerning the theme for this year, where is the standard level at in Trinidad and Tobago? Is it at an acceptable particular place, the food safety and security and standards here?
So the hunt might be on for empirical data after you ask that question. But what I can tell you is that even our regional, sub-regional coordinator in Barbados noted that throughout the region, and that includes Trinidad and Tobago, there needs to be some work to really raise the standard of food safety. It may not be terrible as some other countries, but there is room for improvement. And the FAO works with the ministry along those lines, because we provide technical assistance, and we try to get into the system as far as we can through farmers, through the processors, the producers. We've done work with the school feeding program. I've learned quite a lot from that as well. We work with NAMDEVCO, and NAMDEVCO's packing facilities, which is the post-harvest part of the value chain. It is really up to international standards. Because we need to make sure that at every point in the food system chain, that the checks and balances and measures that we have are adhered to. So, basically, Jason, food is everybody's business, and everybody is a risk manager, and everybody has shares in making sure that food is safe. Because you yourself probably would not go and buy street food from somebody who is sketchy looking with dirty fingers without a food badge. And simple things like those are checks and balances. You look at your food vendor, you don't see running water nearby, you might kind of wonder, what else are you getting inside that wrapper? Mm-hmm. And we need to keep on asking ourselves these questions all the time. And that is the way that that you will, really isolate yourself from foodborne diseases. Because even I didn't realize how many times I touched my face until the pandemic came.
Yeah.
And then I realized, I always touch face thing, scratching at eyes, that sort of thing.
Very
so there is a
conversation.
culture shift that is needed in order to make sure our food is safe. And, like I say, a safe food is for a healthy nation with healthy minds, and that spells progress.
Let me ask
and
you.
that is what we're here for, to push it at every junction.
Let me ask you as we wrap things up, in terms of the theme, again, just elaborate for us some more on the theme for this year and lead us in the direction online where we can get all this information, the great information you would have sent the producer and myself last evening, that the nation know where they can also find that important data.
So this year's theme is Food Standards Save Lives. And it's what we've been talking about all the time. It's not just simply about washing the dirt off, and off your tomato or whatever before you put it in your mouth. But it's understanding the different parts of the process. So a lot of conversations have been had on the use or misuse of fertilizers. Simple guidelines such as if you must use a fertilizer, it must remain on wherever for a certain amount of time before the crop is harvested. And we're really educating farmers about these practices and why they should adhere to it and not harvest crop, for instance, before time. And there are a lot of little things. So it's not only the pathogens and the things that escape into our agricultural system, but also some of the things that we use in the agricultural system that may not necessarily be safe for us. And again, going back to social media, we would have seen videos with people manufacturing vegetable-looking substances from chemical soups and that sort of thing. I don't believe those things are happening in Trinidad. And that is really an extreme way to look at it. But what you want to put in your body and to save your life is really clean, healthy food, which is why the FAO's mandate really and message for the last couple of years has been better production, better nutrition, and better environment for a better life, leaving no one behind, because our mandate is really to achieve zero hunger, right? That is, and those are part of our focus points in terms of the UN Sustainable Development Goals.
Naylan, again, many thanks. In terms of, just hit me the website one more time on the information.
So you can go to FAO.org. There's a plethora of information there. But there's an easy search bar. As soon as you start to type whatever you want, you will get it. And there are stats and figures for the Caribbean countries, even if the available stats for Trinidad and Tobago on different issues concerning food security and food nutrition. FAO.org.
Naylan Dwarika, all the best. Thanks so much for the information. Great conversation, and we must continue this because food safety, food security is everybody's business. All the best,
Yes,
Naylan.
Jason, thank you. It was my pleasure.
Always. You're welcome. That's the National Comms Consultant at the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization. Up next, we head across to UWI for the enrollment. We welcome their lecturer, Dr. Marsha Shelley Pierce, and they will, the lecturer, Dr. Pierce, will give me details concerning UWI enrollment and all the courses offered. Stand by.